Hey guys, back on the Philco Siesta. Not too much left. We're in the home stretch now. Had a little diversion in the last installment with the power transformer going bad, but I've got a replacement installed, so that seems to be working quite well. Since then, a couple things arrived in the mail. One, some of these, well, I'm not really sure what they're called. I think that's why I had trouble finding them in the past. I eventually found them in Mauser Electronics underneath cable mounting and accessories. These are made by Essentra. And these, I wanted to get them because these have been broken off in every 17-inch Predicta I've ever worked on. And there's only one of them, but it's at kind of a crucial point where a lot of the cables come together, and it's good to get them secured. And then, since I went this far, I figured I might as well take the IF board out. Rarely does anything ever go wrong with these. There are no paper caps on this board. They rarely need any kind of alignment. But, again, I figured I went this far. So with it out of the way, I can clean up some rust spots down in there. And also, I'm thinking in the future, if I'm going to be doing a complete rebuild on one of these, taking this out before you do the power supply makes it a whole lot easier, because you can really get right in there at that terminal strip. And it's not that hard to get out. I think there's only 5 wires going to it, and a few of these grounding points here. So I will replace the resistors just because I can. I doubt any of them are that far out of spec, and I don't really intend to do an alignment. I've done alignments on a few of these 17-inch sets. I've never seen it make much of a difference. They tend to have a pretty good picture. This seems to be a rather well-designed IF board. So I'll put a tuner comes into here through this coax, 3 stages of IF, and then the detector's on here too. Speaking of alignment, I looked up the instructions in the SAMs, and they actually do say to do it by ear. And so does the Philco service info, sort of. Both SAMs and the Philco service info suggest just tuning into a broadcast station. And then you adjust the top of this transformer and the top and the bottom of this one for maximum volume, and then you tweak this one for best volume and best quality. This is a quadrature coil. This does not use a ratio detector. For that, you would definitely want to use test equipment. So whereas the SAMs just says that it totally by ear, as best I remember, Philco goes a little bit further. There is a test point down here. They say you can attach a VTVM to it, and you can peak these coils while watching the meter. So I'll go through and do that as best I can. Get this rebuilt, clean up the chassis, wire that back in. And then I'll put the shields back on, all this stuff. I do have some wire on the way. I did eventually find some wire that I will use to replace the Yoke wiring. Basically what I ordered up was some of this stuff. Just like meter test lead wire. Silicone insulated, rated for 2,000 volts supposedly. I'm getting 6 3-meter lengths of it for $12 or something like that. We'll see how it goes. I also just, kind of on a whim, ordered up some of this stuff in my quest to find a decent source of 600 volt solid core wiring. This is rated for 600 volts, but it's stranded, it's not solid core. And it's silicone insulated, and it's super flexible, which for something like a cable control harness like this can be a plus, but for routing wiring down underneath the chassis or like doing point-to-point wiring, solid core is much nicer to work with. You wrap it around a lug, twist it to the other lug, wrap it around, and it stays put. This stuff you'd really need to use some cable ties, because it's going to just flop all over the place. But it's something. It's something. So because I'm getting low on my my stash of this kind of wiring, and the place I got it from does not have it anymore. Yeah, this is from China. This has been go, but it's highly efficient. I got it off Amazon. I don't know, it was $12 or something like that for 5 30-foot rolls. And then I got some more parts for the next Predicta restorations. I've got, I think, 4 more 17-inch sets to do. I will not film them in anywhere near as much detail as this one. I will just do highlights if there are any, but I'm going to do something, now that I've got all the knowledge from doing this one in excruciating detail, I think I can blow through those other ones pretty quickly. Fingers crossed. But I got some other projects to do before that, which you will be seeing very soon. Of course, I got to finish the GE800 TV. Finish this one up. So finish this, rewire that yoke, finish cleaning up stuff, and then get back to putting the head unit back together, and then going back to the main cabinet. I'm going to be taking this all apart. I got to clean off still this bottom section here. And you may recall I did a really quick video where I actually got a replacement clock, I believe, and the plastic piece that fits in here. So we'll be installing those as well. And then maybe trying to do something with that antenna. I just finished taking the front all apart. Basically, it's a matter of taking out a bunch of nuts and screws and then sliding this sort of wafer board thing out of the back of the front mesh. Now I can really get in there and clean this. I'll try Simple Green again and hot water and see how it turns out. I was thinking I'd try to pop that logo out first, but I'm not quite sure how that's attached. I'll see if I can get it out, but if not, I'll just try not to mess it up. I'd say that's slightly better. I actually thought I might end up repainting this, but absolutely no need. So a little bit of crud down in here. I'm not sure if that's some corrosion coming through the paint or maybe just some gunk I need to scrub a little bit more. Same over here. But otherwise, that's in really fine condition. Wasn't able to get the logo off. I just washed it with it in place. Whatever type of thin metallic coating they use is coming off a little bit on top, but I'm not going to mess with it. And I will be doing the same to the main cabinet body. I'd already done quite a bit of cleaning on it already, but now that I've got it all taken apart, I can dunk the whole thing. I do need to take the clock out still, and I'll take this off and the antenna, and then I'll submerge the whole thing. But I already do know from my earlier cleaning that there is definitely some paint loss and some corrosion on this, but not enough that I think I'm going to repaint it anytime soon. This is actually coming out a lot better than I expected. Whatever type of gunk was all over the set did do a pretty good job of preserving it. With the exception of this. This is aluminum that has... This I really do think may be tinted lacquer that's on it. And they use the same around the plastic bezel there. And perhaps it's metallized, like vacuum deposited metallic layer. But you can see it comes off extremely easily with cleaning. So I'm just going to clean it all down to shiny metal. I think it'll look fine on this set. And at some point when I get some tinted lacquer, maybe I'll try coating it. Here's another one on a different set that's in better condition. But even this is coming off. Basically, you cannot clean this stuff, except maybe with some warm water and a very soft cloth. You can't use any type of Windex or polishing compound or anything like that. You'll just take it right off. I clean the IF board using the same process I used on the main board. Simple green, soft brush, hot water, dehydrate mode in the convection oven. It's looking pretty good. And the silicone insulated test leads have arrived 2 days early. So as we don't try using in the yoke and to replace some of this wiring. I thought I got 6 leads, but there's only 4. That's probably my mistake. They are very flexible. I got to take their word for it as to what the insulating properties of this are. The length should be sufficient, so well, give it a try, see how it goes. I do like the flexibility for leads like this, because these tend to get very crusty because of the heat. Oh yeah, and these are also, because they're silicone, they're supposed to be able to withstand high heat. I don't recall exactly what, like 200 degrees centigrade, something like that, which should work out a lot better than this old, what I presume is probably natural rubber or something, but now is rock hard. Boy, just a few minutes with simple green and hot water, and virtually all that goldish color just floated right off. So whatever it was, it's not brass plating, and I don't think it's lacquer, because lacquer would not have come off of that easily. And I've seen enough Predictas to know that they're not supposed to look like this, and that wasn't just like nicotine buildup like in the rest of the set. So, well, here's what I'm left with. I'll polish this up a bit. I'm pretty darn sure this is cast aluminum, so it's going to get a little bit grayish, but it's not going to rust or anything. And, well, it looks something like that. Which, yeah, it looks fine, but every other bit of trim on the entire set is this goldish color. Speaking of which, here is the band that goes around the outside. I cleaned it up a bit. It's like spring steel inside of a plastic sandwich. It's tinted gold. I've cleaned it well. I will polish it with some Novus No. 2 plastic polish, and it's in really, really good shape. So not much left. I'm going to see about dismounting that clock. I've never actually seen one of these running, I don't think. I know they're notorious for having problems. One of which is really common is for these to break off, so there should be a knob on either side. Yeah, you can get reproduction knobs or salvage them from clocks, but often these are broken off. This one appears to be all there. This one is broken off. So even if you had the knobs, there's nothing for it to go onto. There are little extensions you can get. I think I've got a pair, but they're a little bit large for this, and I'm not sure they will fit through the plastic cover that goes over this, but we'll see. Meanwhile, at least we can see if we can get the clock running and see how the alarm mechanism works. I cut the connector off of one end of that test lead wire and stripped it back, and the wire is definitely heavier gauge than I need, but as long as the insulation is sturdy enough, that's fine. And I already clipped out the old wire, so it's going to go through here and down and around, wraps around that lug, and then I'll trim it off here, and it'll go on to that plate cap lead and the horizontal output tube. I have the cabinet completely broken down and ready for cleaning. Unfortunately, the interior label will get ruined, but then again, it's in pretty miserable shape as it is, so not too concerned. I took some reference photos, and I do have some other examples of this same, or one other example of this same model, and I think it's got a label in better condition, so maybe I can reproduce that one. Here is the cast aluminum collar that holds the CRT that will also get cleaned and then re-greased. And finally, the clock. I don't think this was made by Philco. There's a label inside. Kind of hard to read. It says electronic timer made in USA, motor rating, switch rating, and so on. Anyways, well, here it is. So, clock mechanism, run off an AC, right off the AC line with this motor, and there's a switch on it, or like a reed toggle switch kind of thing. And very often these are broken, and this one is no exception. The other contact for the switch has come loose, or it may have been pulled out intentionally because maybe the switch wasn't working right and somebody just wanted to short it out. I'm not sure. I'm going to clean up the wiring. I'll see if I can get the switch to work. Of course, I want to see if the motor and clock work. It's kind of gunked up. I'll probably wash this and re-lubricate it. I do have a spare. Seller on eBay was selling off some miscellaneous Siesta parts, including the clock mechanism. So let's take a look at that one. Maybe it's in better condition. Here it is, still in bubble wrap from when I got it. I don't think I've ever actually taken a good look at it. I hate when people do this. I understand they want to make things secure. I don't have a problem with bubble wrap, but when they wrap it with a ton of sticky tape, it's very difficult to get open. I've actually damaged one or two items trying to get it open because of all the packing tape. Just one or two little pieces would secure it. I mean, it's going to just be putting bubble wrap and then inside a box. You don't need to wrap it up like a mummy with all the tape. Ooh, I got a bad feeling. Yeah. Unless he took them off. But I'm guessing he didn't. What I got a bad feeling about is the hands. There's nothing on the front of this. It was just wrapped in bubble wrap. It would have smashed the hands down, but I don't even see the second or minute hand. All I see is the hour hand. So unless the person was very astute and removed them and packed it separately somewhere in this package, looks like they're just gone. This one looks to be in actually worse shape than the other one I've got. Oh yeah, the motor leads completely ripped out. You can see, yeah, the control arms are completely broken off. And most of the hands are gone from the clock. So, not much to salvage out of this. And it's also missing the other, or no, the other switch contact is there. Okay, well at least now I know where it goes. It's loose though. So I don't know what happened to this one. Whether somebody was tinkering with it or what. Control arm works at least. So there's a long control arm here. It goes out to the back of the set. You push it in, and I think that sets the alarm. So I push it in and I'm rotating it, and there's some gears turning inside. If I pull it out, I believe that's to set the time, and now I can go either way. But this one's kind of messed up, so it doesn't have the hands on it. Let's try it on the other one. So pull the lever out and rotate it, and there you go. And hand moves. So I'm going to focus on trying to get this one working. If I need to, maybe I can scavenge some bits from the other ones. I don't know a whole lot about clocks. I do not want to take an excursion into rebuilding a clock mechanism. I don't even know that I'd ever use this. It's certainly not for the alarm feature. That's what the red hand is. I believe you can either have the set turn on or off, or maybe both by a timer. I'd be perfectly happy just to have the clock running. Alrighty, let's give this clock a little test. I attached a line cord right to it. I measured the resistance on the coil. It's 1 kilo ohm. I did see the name on the motor is Telecron. And how about that? I've always heard that these motor mechanisms were really reliable and very accurate. So that's cool. I just finished cleaning out the cabinet. It's drying right now. And meanwhile, I will continue working on the IF board. Alrighty, back to the yoke and its crusty wiring. So I'd put this aside because, well, the wiring was disintegrating, and it seemed that two of the wires, the ones for the horizontal yoke winding, are a little bit different. I don't have the specs, but just judging from it and knowing the kind of drive that goes to a yoke, I figure these are high voltage wires, but not like 20,000 volts like might go to a pitcher tube, but more than is in these. So I went hunting around for some wire, and I picked up this stuff I'd shown a little while ago. This is supposedly rated for 2,000 volts. It's got some pretty decent insulation. It's very flexible, which I also want because this wire gets moved around when you rotate the pitcher tube a little bit. One thing I don't like about it is it's thicker gauge. Supposedly 15 gauge, a lot of fine wires. I forget how many they said, but it's dozens and dozens of very fine wire here. I'll strip it a little bit off the end so you can see what I'm talking about. Very easy to strip, very easy to work with, very solderable. It's just more wire than I need. So as a consequence, the outer diameter is fatter than the original. Don't think that'll be too much of an issue. The opening from the CRT head down into the side is pretty generous. And then there's the other four wires, which are for other yoke windings. Let's see, schematic. And I might think you only need four wires, two horizontal, two vertical, but we've got six. So let's see what all six of these are for. So yeah, two for the vertical, and I think there's three for the horizontal. Oh, and three for the vertical as well. It's grounded in the middle. Okay, so there's the six wires. Now, I've not really delved into one of these Predicta yokes in that much detail before, so it's a little bit new for me. I've adjusted them before, so I know some of what's going on here. So like this is for tweaking the horizontal linearity, I do believe. These are centering rings. These are slightly magnetic, and to get the picture perfectly centered, you can move these ears around. It's a pretty common system. I've also got a capacitor here, which is also kind of common on the horizontal windings to suppress ringing, I believe. Let's see what's underneath this cover. Well, I like the plastic they used so often in sets, especially from the early to mid-50s. These have disintegrated. It's a real hassle, it's a real problem. But this stuff has stood up quite well. I'm happy about that. I've had to rebuild enough of these and I don't want to do it again. Alright, so that one grounding wire, let's see, also goes to this, which this hoop contacts the outer coating on the CRT, which acts as a filter capacitor for the high voltage. So that's what that's all about. Inside we've got two 680 ohm resistors across the vertical windings, also very, very common, also there to suppress ringing. And I believe there's one more part lurking in here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. There's a thermistor inside the yoke. I'm not sure why. I think it's protection if something overheats. I'm not positive. I also don't know what kind of condition it's in. Usually these early thermistors are not, they don't hold up quite so well, but as long as the yoke works after I rewire it, I'm not going to mess with any of this stuff. But anyways, with this cover off, which comes off quite easily, we can get the wiring. So it just comes right up through a hole here, and here's where the two higher voltage wires go, and then the other four go around here. Now, I didn't think I was going to have to replace the other four until I took a closer look at this wire, and oh yes, yes I will, because it is also disintegrating. So what am I going to use for this? Well, again, I want to use stranded because this wire gets flexed. Use single solid core wire, fluxes enough time to get metal fatigue, it's going to snap. Well, really the only stranded wire I've got that's rated for hundreds of volts is this stuff, which I got at the same place I got my dwindling stash of solid core wire. And this is still readily available. But really all it is, it's plastic insulated, 600 volt, stranded wire with a cloth jacket over it. I think you could peel off this cloth and you'd just simply have some 600 volt stranded wire. It's strictly for appearance, in other words. Which is cool, except the wire is about twice the diameter of the original stuff. So I got two choices. Again, I think that the opening is big enough it can handle all 6 of these wires being almost double the original diameter. Or I could peel back all the cloth off 4 of these wires at least and get them down to a smaller diameter. I'll leave the cloth on for now. So that's that. I need to replace some wires, so one thing I want to do is make sure these test leads I picked up, I believe, are 6 feet long. Or, sorry, 3 feet long. 3 meters long, to be specific. So is that long enough? Oh yeah, plenty long. Looks like these original wires are about 2 feet long. So I got some extra. That's cool. Now to get these out, it's just like 2 pins. These are hollow pins. So you heat them up, and the wire should just pull right out. Let's see if we can get one of them going. And then to put the new wires in, same deal. Tin the end, stick it down in the hole until it comes out the other end, and then finish it off with a little solder blob and make it nice and neat. I'll do these one at a time so I don't screw anything up. Let's see where the thermistor is on the schematic while the soldering iron heats up. So there it is. It's sort of in between the yoke windings. So it's the bottom of one yoke winding, and then the thermistor, and then it goes to ground. So if this is the type that's high resistance when it's cold, this would limit the current through half of the coil while it warms up, I think. Or conversely, if it's a type that limits the current or gets higher in resistance as it gets hot, I could see it limiting the current if this gets too warm. Now, given as this is driven from a symmetrical circuit, I would think if the current increases on one side, it would increase on the other. Maybe it's just there for temperature compensation. Oh, I don't really know. But I bet one of you guys does. Speaking of heat, soldering iron is heated up. Let's try doing, let's do this black wire. Now that'll be the other challenge. That the test lead wire, it's a lot thicker gauge than this original stuff. Yeah, it just pulls right out. So, how am I going to cram all those wires in a hole meant for this? Yeah, I could just snip off half of them, which may very well be what I end up doing. So, let's see, I'll need to strip this back. Oh, about this far, maybe. So this is silicone insulated wire, which seems to be more and more prevalent. I don't really see any PVC insulated. It's p10o, I think, which may be the same thing as PVC. I'm not sure. But that doesn't seem to be anywhere near as prevalent as this silicone stuff. I think that might fit. So here's one that doesn't have a pin. It'll just barely fit through that hole. I'll use a little solder work to clean that out. I think it's going to be a little bit too big to fit in there. So yeah, it seems like all the wiring these days is 300 volts, not 600. So that's a drag. And that could be a bigger and bigger problem for this hobby as time goes on. One other type of wire I've seen at a few places that sell... Oh, yeah, wait. I forgot. Yeah, I could use this stuff, too. Instead of the cloth covered. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. I bought this for antique radios, where I want to replicate the cloth covered wire. So, yeah, let's keep it for that, and I'll go with this stuff. So, anyways, the guitar amp places, they have a type of wire. It's stranded, but it's tinned. Like, the individual strands are tinned, and then it's wrapped together, and I think maybe even heated up a bit, so the wires are kind of stuck together. So, supposedly it has the benefits of both worlds. It's a bit stiff, like solid core, so it kind of stays put, but it's got a little bit of give to it, like stranded. And it didn't seem to be all that expensive, so I'll have to order some up and give it a try. And it's also rated for 600 volts. That's the wrong one. Let's get this guy. Well, that took some doing. There's quite a bit of solder down in there. So, take this. Man, there's so many strands in this stuff. It's crazy. I think what I'll do too is look around at test leads and see if I can find stuff that has a little bit smaller gauge. I found some heavier gauge stuff, but this 15 gauge was the smallest I found. And yeah, it's not going to fit. I'll have to peel off a few of these strands. Certainly there's nowhere near enough current going through this that I need this heavy gauge wire. Something half or even a third of this would be plenty. So what I kind of want to do is evenly go around and give this thing a little haircut. Yeah, I think something like that should fit. Yep, that'll work. So I'll tin this up and trim it down, make it nice and neat, and thread it up in there. There it is. One thing to be cognizant of is this pushes into the back of the set and all the wires kind of go up and out of the way. So the back can press onto the set, so that's why I bent this over when I secured it. Not the greatest job, but it should do. And also, I salvaged a bit of the wire that I cut out so you can get a closer look at it. And it's double insulated. It got me thinking, several of you did suggest to me that I take 600 volt insulated stranded wire and simply put another layer on the outside, heat shrink tubing or similar type sleeving over it. Which is a good idea, and I may very well do that in the future. Actually, one of the other sets I've got, I think one of the ones I got recently, when I was examining it, I saw that the yoke, every wire had been cut and then spliced back together. I'm not sure what all that was about, but I may very well want to replace that wiring harness as well. So I'll use my experience gained from doing this one on future projects, in other words. Alright, so I got that one done, and I'll hook it up at the other end and do these wires one by one. Couple quick things while I continue wiring this yoke. One, just a general thing I've learned the hard way about searching is you gotta know what search terms to use. So on my quest for wire, I had been searching for things like the specs, like 22 AWG stranded at 5 kV. Wasn't finding much luck. Eventually I just did silicone wire, stranded wire, and poured through listings and eventually found this stuff. And it occurred to me, well, hey, what is this stuff? It's test lead. I had also tried searching for hookup wire, Well, bam, go to Mauser and search for test leads, test lead wire instead of hookup wire. And there we go. Pomona, a respected brand name, 5 kilovolt rated wire, 18 gauge stranded, and get 50 feet for about 18 bucks in red and black. So that is what I will be using in the future. This stuff is 15 gauge. It's a little too fat. You've seen I've been struggling to use it. 18 gauges will still be a little thicker than I'd like, but better than this, and it should be able to use it as is. And it will be from a respected manufacturer with a known rating. And it'll be rated higher than this, which is 2 kV, 5 kV, even better. So winner all around. The other thing is, this wiring, originally they had masking tape spaced periodically into the trace of the adhesive there to keep the wires together. What I'd like to do, or try to do, is use heat shrink tubing. I think this will probably be correct with the 2 thicker wires and 4 thinner wires. However, can't put heat shrink tubing on after the fact. So luckily I've only done 2 wires all the way so far. So I'll disconnect those 2, cut up half a dozen or so lengths of this, about 1 inch long, slide them on to my pre-cut wires, and then connect the ends. I also am going to go ahead and replace those resistors because, hey, why not? And there we go. It's a little garish, but that blue heat shrink tubing was the perfect diameter, so there we go. All wired up with new resistors. And now I just got to finish putting back the chassis so we can see if this actually works. I'm back to doing some experiments on the support arms. So here's results from an earlier attempt, which gave it a nice brassy color, but it's not shiny. And also there's pitting from where there had been some rust. So I wanted to know how much effort would it take to get rid of the pitting, and if I start with a really highly polished steel surface, can I coat it with brass and still have it be really shiny? So I spent an hour or so polishing up the other end. The pitting was so deep I actually ended up using a file at one point. And after the file I used some, I think, 80 grit sandpaper and 220, 400 and 800 and 1000 and some steel wool and then some metal polish. It's not perfect, but there's a section that is pretty darn shiny. So now I get the torch and the brass brush and see what this will end up looking like. So here's the result. Unfortunately, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Now, I think it looks a lot better without the pitting. Nice uniform surface, but it's not shiny anymore. The friction action of the brass bristles against the steel dulled it out, so we have essentially a satin finish. And honestly, if I could do the whole thing quickly and economically and get it all looking uniformly like that, I'd be fine with it. Sure, it'd be great to have a mirror brass finish, but on a budget, that's just not going to happen. And a few of you have suggested, well, try electroplating it. It's not that simple. Some even question, is it even possible to electroplate brass? Because brass is an alloy, it's not an element. If you want to electroplate, say, copper, that's easy. Get some copper sulfate, a sacrificial piece of copper, throw it in a fish tank, and it's pretty trivial. But brass is a combination of tin and copper, and to really electroplate it properly, you've got to use a specially prepared solution that has the right chemicals and the right proportion of copper and tin, and even then it's not so easy. With the temperature and the current you use and refreshing the chemicals periodically and all that. The really good stuff, the commercial stuff, has cyanide in it. You cannot get it. In the United States, plating in general is one of the most heavily regulated industries. It's really difficult to get commercial grade plating done, which I think is why there aren't that many platers around. Now, yes, there are some. Absolutely, I could send all this stuff out and get it commercially done. But if I send them the rusted stuff, they're going to charge me to grind it down, polish it up, and then for the plating, it's going to cost hundreds of dollars to do all these arms. So, yeah, that's why I'm exploring this possibility. And yes, there are hobbyist electroplating kits you can get. Still, to do something on this scale would still be hundreds of dollars, and the results would not be as good because the chemicals that they use are not as good as the commercial stuff. So, yes, I could use metallic paints. I've used them plenty of times before. They don't look that good. They wouldn't even, and they're certainly not going to be mirror finish, and I don't think they would even quite look so good as this. But if you've got rusty arms and you want something really quick and simple, by all means, you get yourself some brass metallic paint and have at it. It will certainly stop the corrosion and it'll look better than nothing. So where I stand with this is, this was a ton of work to polish this out by hand, just a small section. I would certainly need to get tools. I don't have a bench grinder. I don't have the various buffing wheels and compounds I would need to do this efficiently. Until I do, I'm not going to completely finish these. That would be an insane amount of work. But I do have some brass bristle attachments for a rotary drill on the way, and eventually I will get myself a grinder and buffing wheel stuff, probably from Harbor Freight or something fairly inexpensive. Finally, I am going to attempt to very, very gingerly polish this. I did several passes on this to try to build up the brass layer a little bit thick, but I got a feeling I know what's going to happen when I try. I used a tiny amount of Simichrome, and yeah, it's a little bit shinier, but it's also a little bit less brassy. Because after all, what scored, what got dull, is the steel while I was putting the brass on. So to get this polished back to what it was, I'd basically have to wear off all the brass and get the steel shiny again. But as I say, hey, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. I could live with that. Now, of course, this will tarnish very quickly, so assuming I did this whole thing, got it all looking nice like that, I would clear coat it with lacquer. They make lacquer especially for metals that works particularly well on this stuff. I finished work on the IF board, including replacing the one cup plate that's on there, and I just soldered in the grounding sticks. I need to hook up a few wires, and that'll be done. I installed the yoke with the new wiring on the CRT. So, a few things to do, and then we can power this up and see how the yoke wiring stands up. Yep, it works. There are some obvious geometry issues, and it's off-center, but I can deal with all that. That'll be easier dealt with once the set's a bit more together. I'll let it run for a while, make sure that the wiring doesn't have any issues, but I don't expect to have any, so excellent. So I think I'm going to go back to doing some cosmetic stuff and end off this segment, And hopefully there'll be one more installment, and that'll be the final wrap of everything back together and adjusted and working great.